The Jak And Daxter trilogy has to be one of the most fascinating series in gaming. I mean, how many franchises can you say go from being inspired to Mario 64 to Grand Theft Auto while keeping this much of its core identity? Developed by Naughty Dog back when they actually made new games instead of releasing the same two over and over, they created one of three first-party platforming series on the PS2, and I'd argue that out of the three, it's by far the one with the worst fate. Ratchet & Clank is still alive with Ripped Apart's release in 2021, and Sly Cooper had a movie planned for 2016 that, while being cancelled, looked pretty cool. Jak and Daxter, on the other hand, appeared as playable characters in PlayStation Move Heroes and All-Stars Battle Royale. 13 years ago. Yeah, things are pretty dire with this franchise, and when you remove the crossover games from the equation, things don't look much better, as you're left with today's subject, Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier. Originally it was a PSP game that was later ported to the PS2, which will be the version that I'm looking at. Before even starting, there are some strange quirks that don't bode well. Daxter is inexplicably back on the title, something about Jak just looks off, and most dire, this game was developed by High Impact Games, the same team responsible for making portable entries in the Ratchet & Clank series, only to eventually be banished into the realm of making licensed games until their eventual shutdown. Starting the game up doesn't help matters, with this sauceless title screen, sound settings that only move in increments of 3 for some reason, and the damn aspect ratio reverting to 4:3 every time the game resets, meaning I have to manually edit the opening movie to be 16:9, yay! Starting up the game, we're greeted with an opening cinematic. The world is currently dealing with an eco shortage, causing rampant eco-storms to ravage the world. Jak, Daxter, and Kira are traveling to find an alternate eco source. Jak and Daxter here because, well, they're the main characters, while Kira is tagging along expecting to get some experience in becoming an eco-sage. Suddenly pirates! With the eco shortage, sky pirates ambush lonely travelers to take what little eco they can. And the leader of this particular group is this fellow called Phoenix, whose first impression can be described as very Namor-coded.
You'll get nothing here. On the contrary, it seems I have stumbled on the world's most beautiful treasure.
After a brief scuffle between him and Jak, Daxter accidentally shoots the main fuel tank, forcing the group to make an emergency landing at the brink, also known as the literal end of the world. Like, yeah, the world's creation just sorta stopped. Does this mean that Jak's planet is flat? After starting a new game and going through the game's tutorial, the group fixes up their plane and manages to refuel it. They then notice that an airship is being attacked by pirates. After taking them out, they meet up with a man called Skyheed, the Duke of Europa. As thanks for dealing with the pirates, and passing their test, he allows the group to study an ancient relic that may hold the key to saving the energy crisis. So at that point, you can probably guess where the story goes from here, using the MacGuffin to travel to multiple areas while butting head with Phoenix and his pirate gang, right? Well, actually, later on the gang form a truce with the pirates, eventually finding out that Skyheed isn't the ally they originally thought he was, infecting his entire city with dark eco to create an unstoppable army and take over the world. It sounds like a cool idea, right? Well, here's the issue. The truce happens only an hour into the story, and Skyheed isn't even brought up until his big twist halfway through the game. This is one of the main problems with the narrative. Everything happens way too fast, leaving no time for character development, world building, or giving the player a reason to care. A good example of this is this old guy. He has amnesia, but they spend so little time on that plot point that when it becomes relevant, the weight of the reveal that he was a Dark Eco Sage who is the reason the European citizens are infected with Dark Eco just falls completely flat. Which sucks, because this scene is when the narrative shifts and reveals that Skyheed is the real villain. Another instance is Phoenix's right-hand man, Clout. God, that's a stupid name. Late into the game, he ends up betraying the pirates, but not only does this moment mean nothing as we don't spend nearly enough time getting to know him, but after the betrayal, he's unceremoniously killed off. Or at least I think he is, because he doesn't appear or get mentioned after this moment. My last example is the role of Skyheed's second in command, the Chancellor. He appears briefly in the intro, is suspicious of the trio, and that's about it. After Skyheed is revealed to be the villain, you'd assume that he's in on the leader's plan, but as the end of the game approaches, he's revealed to be the one who leaked valuable intel to the crew. But here's the thing. He never shows up after the intro, only helps the group one time, and doesn't give any signs that he resents the past guy he chose, making his sudden death afterward feel like nothing in the grand scheme of things. So you probably get the point by now. The narrative is a disappointment and doesn't leave much of an impact. But what about the gameplay? Painfully mediocre. Most of the moveset from the earlier games is intact, but the entire thing feels strange. Enemies barely react to attacks, either shrugging them off or staggering in a way that must be staggered again. Platforming feels incredibly weightless. Aside from the spin jump, nothing feels satisfying. With the roll and hoverboard being completely removed, traveling through open areas feels sluggish. At the very least, the gunplay works just as good as the previous games. The scattergun is still a solid get-off-me tool, the blaster's air spin trick is a great crowd control option, the minigun is absolutely busted, and the new lobber, while it's no peacemaker, is a great high damage burst option. The lack of Jak's dark and light transformations does hurt quite a bit, and the in-universe justification is pretty damn lame. Something about Eco being too unstable. But even with the transformations removed, enemies still drop Dark Eco, so what's its purpose now? Well, the recurrency. The fuel source Jak finds in the intro is a crystal that converts Dark Eco into Green Eco. This discovery leads Kira to find a way to convert Dark Eco into other colors, so you can spend the Dark Eco you collect on upgrades, ranging from buffing melee damage, increasing health, and adding bonus effects to certain moves. The issue with this is, aside from the health upgrades, most of them barely affect gameplay, and none of the upgrades affect guns. And by the time you unlock the upgrade system, you obtain the blaster right away. Most of the time, guns are the superior combat option. Only a handful of times does the game force melee combat onto you. The other new addition that I'm much more positive on is Jak's new eco powers. Throughout the game, you'll find these precursor idols that grant Jak a new eco power. These feel like a natural evolution of the series' use of eco, and there's a lot of variety. Amplifier throws a ball of red eco that acts like a grenade that detonates upon being shot, good for crowd control, piercing through armor, and destroying blockades. Construct creates a set of contact-sensitive platforms for a short period of time, and you can create a crystal shard to block attacks and deal minimal damage. Rocket Jump gives you a burst of height and slows your fall, gaining more height if you use it on a geyser or ball of yellow eco. Teleport swaps your position with these statues, Shield prevents damage and allows traversal across liquid hazards, and finally, my favorite of the bunch, Reflexes, which Chaos Control! Now, that would be everything about the gameplay, but there's actually two other main gameplay styles I need to talk about. The more prominent being the plane gameplay and... Star Fox this ain't. The gameplay loop with these sections is either just flying from the ship to your destination, or dogfights, which half the time punish you for using a mechanic that's essential to upgrading your plane. I could talk about the former, but just look at this footage. What is there to talk about? So let's talk about dogfights and how they punish you. During flight, you can attempt to tether onto another plane. If you don't break line of sight, you'll send Daxter onto it and perform a series of quicktime events to steal mods or repair patches. These sequences can take a lot of time, doubly so if you get the jumping quicktime event. The issue with this is that a good portion of these dogfights involve defending the pirate ship, and if you start a tether, you've turned that thing into a giant sitting duck because for some stupid reason, you and you alone are the only one allowed to defend the damn thing while the whole crew just chills inside. And the plane gameplay in general is just so dull. There's little feedback when you shoot at stuff, it overstays its welcome every time, and the repair patch system is so incredibly frustrating, like, Daxter! The plane is falling apart and we have patches! Why aren't you using them? Speaking of our orange friend, let's talk about the last gameplay style, Daxter segments. In earlier games, these were cute moments that not only broke up the standard Jak gameplay, but also served to showcase how he was more than just Jak's wisecracking comic relief sidekick. So how did this game handle these segments? They put him in the Eco Shield power, which makes him control like shit. Wait a minute. That only happens once. Is there something I'm missing? Oh. Oh, right. Okay, so back in Europa during the intro, Daxter finds himself accidentally falling into an open sewer hole. After looking around, he finds himself getting Dark Eco spilled onto him, which ends up transforming him into this monstrous new form. Yep, according to the game, Dark Jak is not allowed, but Dark Daxter, that's perfectly fine. Now, some people would look at this and think that the idea is dumb, especially when you consider Daxter's history with Dark Eco and certain attributes of Ossels in this world. And I'd agree, but I don't fundamentally hate Dark Daxter as a concept. I mean, an anthropomorphic, light-haired character that transforms into a dark form that focuses on strength? Well, that's just the Werehog from Unleashed, and I like the Werehog. Sadly, I describe Dark Daxter as the parts that suck about the Werehog. You have slow movement, boring puzzles, and instead of having a diverse set of combos and skills, you get projectiles with zero impact, and an uncontrollable Tasmanian Devil Tornado that's basically required to make these sections the slightest bit of fun. Except destroying the elevator at the end of every Dark Daxter level. Property damage is always a blast! So the gameplay sucks, but maybe there's some kind of payoff in the narrative? No, there isn't. Dark Daxter levels start with Daxter arbitrarily getting himself separated from Jak, and end with Daxter reverting to normal right before reuniting with Jak, and promptly getting ignored when he tries to explain what happened to him. The exception with this is the final level, where he actually transforms in front of Jak and Kira. Now, how do you think Jak would react to his best friend suddenly having the same power as him? Is he shocked that he has that power in the first place? Does he feel sad that both of them transform into dangerous monsters? No to both those questions. His first instinct is to make a fat joke.
Hey Dax, putting on some pounds.
Cool! Now, look, I know this game was originally on the PSP, but good lord, this presentation sucks. When compared to the original trilogy, the colors just feel washed out. Like, geez, even the first game looks better, and that game looks hella rough. The environments don't do this game any favors either, with such thrilling locales such as generic grassland, generic lava area, and generic lab. The camera doesn't help matters. I don't know how anyone handled this unwieldy thing on the PSP version. Aside from the boss fights, it's almost always facing the direction you don't want it to. And while I'm happy to say that Jak still has that same squash and stretch effect on all his in-game animations that make him a joy to just look at, I can't say the same about him, or anyone for that matter, in the cutscenes. Now, despite the fact that every single cutscene is pre-rendered, they all look like complete trash. With the exception of Daxter, everyone's model looks really bad, with stiff animation to boot. If the unengaging story didn't make you not give a shit about the story, these awful cutscenes certainly will. Now, I can't talk about the presentation and not highlight the worst offender when it comes to this aspect. Kira. Oh my god, how did High Impact butcher this woman this badly? For anyone not aware, here's how she looked in the original trilogy. And here's how she looks in Lost Frontier. She barely looks like the same character, and they didn't even stop with her design. Remember that whole truce with the pirates? Kira was the one who vouched for the idea, but it's not because she got some kind of idea that the pirates can be trusted or Europa can't. Nope, it's because she inexplicably developed feelings for Phoenix, despite the fact that throughout the game she's always been Jak's love interest, and nothing in this game seems to indicate something wrong with their relationship. And don't even get me started on the forgettable ass soundtrack. 90% of the time you're listening to the most generic music in the world. There's only a handful of tracks that don't fall into this pit, and even then, I've already forgot about them. Except the track that plays in the first Dark Daxter level. Weirdly enough, that one is the only one that sticks in my mind at the moment. Also, why does the music get quieter when any voice line plays? Not only is it super distracting, but it's pointless. If the player thinks the music is overpowering the dialogue, they can just turn the music volume down. Alright, all that's left is the finale, and oh boy, it's a doozy. So after the last Dark Daxter level, you infiltrate Europa, which is unironically pretty solid, except for this Dark Eco pit section where I ran into a bunch of weird issues with the platforming, like how you can't turn around in midair. You confront Skyheed, who immediately transforms into his dark form. Oh yeah, this is totally fine too, but Dark Jak is just too outlandish! Anyways, this fight is awful. He's immune to guns, so you're forced to chip away at his health with eco powers. And for some reason, during the entire fight, there's no music at all. Like, I know I said the soundtrack sucked, but this is supposed to be the final boss. There shouldn't be any awkward silence. Except, this isn't actually the final boss, because after beating him, Skyheed retreats on a plane, starring an aerial chase sequence that just sorta stops without his health being completely depleted. And then there's the actual final boss. The same battleship you fought like 3 times before. Except this time, after the fight, Phoenix sacrifices himself because... reasons? And you fight the battleship again, but with this busted ass laser. And then the game just sort of ends. Like, it doesn't even feel like there's any real fanfare when you finally kill Skyheat. The credits just sort of show up while Daxter starts yapping away. Man, what an absolutely dull experience. Every time this game does something right, about 4 things go horribly wrong. And the worst part about this is, it really didn't have to be this way. I feel like that if one of the gameplay styles was removed or trimmed down so more time could be spent on the rest of the game, this could have been a solid entry into the series. But nope. This is how the Jak and Daxter series ends. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. If you're interested in this franchise, I encourage you to ignore the hell out of this one and stick with literally any other game in the series. A good starting point would be the Jak and Daxter collection on PS3. I know that might be a bit of an odd suggestion considering how old the console is, but I've heard some pretty bad things regarding the PS4 ports of these games. Especially Jak 2. Its cutscenes seem to be more at home on a FNAF title screen than the game they're from.